What to do when the world needs a hero, but said hero happens to be on vacation. Hey everyone, how's it? Kiyakahi Matsumoto here, presenting to you all another honest review, this time around of the movie Spider-Man Far From Home. Anyway, just as a disclaimer before I get started, I do use mild spoilers in my reviews just to help illustrate certain points, so heads up, you've been warned. Also, in case anyone wonders how and why I give the movies that I watch the scores that they get, not to worry, I put a link in the description that will take you to a short video that will explain the reasoning behind my scoring. To summarize, while the movie got uncomfortably awkward for a good quarter to half of its runtime, I'm gonna say, it was still a funny and enjoyable epilogue to the MCU's Phase 3 after the massive finale that was Avengers Endgame. And spoiler alert, for those who have not seen Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, stop watching this right now because this movie directly ties into those two. Tom Holland returns as Peter Benjamin Parker, also known as Spider-Man, an intelligent teenager from Queens, New York, who, after being bitten by a radioactive spider, gains superhuman strength, speed, agility, reflexes, the ability to cling to any surface via his hands and feet on command, and the ability to detect immediate danger and incoming threats via a kind of sixth sense. He also fires synthetic webbing he manufactured himself from mechanical wrist-mounted devices that he uses for a variety of purposes, such as swinging from building to building, apprehending criminals, and even preventing massive structural damage. Samuel L. Jackson also reprises his role as Nicholas J. Fury, the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D. who needs Peter's assistance to combat a threat that could literally destroy the planet. Also returning from previous MCU films are Zendaya as Michelle M.J. Jones, Peter's intelligent, smart aleck classmate and love interest, Kobe Smulders as Maria Hill, a former high-ranking S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and Nick Fury's second-in-command, Jon Favreau as Harold Happy Hogan, the head of security at Stark Industries and Tony Stark's former bodyguard, Jacob Batalon as Ned Leeds, Peter's best friend, Marisa Tomei as May Parker, Peter's aunt, and Jake Gyllenhaal as Quentin Beck, a master of trickery and illusions who eventually takes up the codename Mysterio. Also in minor yet notable roles are J.B. Smoove as Julius Dell, Peter's teacher and a chaperone, Martin Starr as Roger Harrington, Peter's academic decathlon teacher and another chaperone, Tony Revolori as Eugene Flash Thompson, Peter's classmate and rival who antagonizes him repeatedly, Angourie Rice as Betty Brant, Peter's classmate, and Remy Hii as Brad Davis, a popular student and Peter's rival for MJ's affections. The film is set about 8 months after Avengers Endgame, where the world still mourns the losses of the fallen Avengers during the battles with the Mad Titan Thanos. In light of that, Midtown High organizes a 2-week vacation to Europe for Peter's class, in order to lift their spirits. Peter, still grieving the loss of Tony Stark, intends to leave his spider suits behind so he can relax, enjoy his vacation, and confess how he feels to MJ. After an attack by a giant monster made out of water, Nick Fury hijacks Peter's class vacation and introduces the wall crawler to Quentin Beck, a man claiming to be from another dimension who has come to Peter's own to combat the elementals, monstrous beings made purely of natural elements that are intent on destroying the planet. Nicknamed Mysterio by Peter's classmates, Beck teams up with Peter to combat the elementals, while Peter still attempts to confess his feelings to MJ and keep his friends out of harm's way. Eventually, Beck's true colors are shown, ending in a final confrontation that pits illusions and technology versus intuition and skill. Now, this film had several things working well for it. The action shots and sequences were well done, the special effects were also good, and the film had just enough humor in it to help balance out its more serious moments, and wasn't oversaturated with the comedy, which is a relief. While there were several moments in the film that got uncomfortable, there were also quite a few heartwarming moments in there as well to help kind of take the edge off of it. I also thoroughly enjoyed how they handled Mysterio and his abilities, in addition to showing Spider-Man relying more on his spider sense, which was much appreciated. I also liked how even though a machine fabricates Peter's final suit, Peter is the one who inputs the design and specs himself, showcasing the character's creative side. Also worth praise are how the film directly addresses certain questions that I've had about certain events in Avengers Endgame. The chemistry between the actors felt believable, even if it could get a little cringeworthy at times. I mean, half the cast are portraying teenagers after all. The film's soundtrack wasn't half bad, And the little tribute to Stan Lee and Steve Ditko at the end was also a nice touch. Also, you do not want to miss the mid and post-credits scene, as the mid-credits one is possibly one of the best ones that they've ever done, thanks to a very special cameo. Unfortunately, there were a few issues that did tend to drag this film down a bit. First and foremost, continuity. While it didn't quite have as big of a continuity error that Spider-Man Homecoming did, specifically the 8 years later blunder, they still needed to have been a bit more thorough, specifically with Peter's age. Peter directly states that he is 16 in this film, but it doesn't quite add up with things that have happened with the other films. While Kevin Feige has gone on record to state that the MCU films don't necessarily follow a linear timeline, it's clear he only said that to cover up the 8 years later blunder in Spider-Man Homecoming, because most of the MCU films do in fact follow a linear timeline, meaning his statement is false. To help bring people up to speed, Peter was first introduced in Captain America Civil War, which itself was set in 2016. This is further supported by Vision, who said that Tony Stark first announced that he was Iron Man to the world 8 years prior, meaning that the first Iron Man movie was released and set in the same year, 2008. On top of that, the Battle of New York in the first Avengers film was also confirmed by Avengers Endgame to have taken place in 2012. This is also confirmed by Iron Man in Avengers Infinity War, who states that Thanos had been inside his head for the last 6 years since he sent an army to New York. Now, Avengers Infinity War is set in 2018. 18 minus 6 is 12. There you have it. Now, where am I going with all this? Peter said he had his powers for 6 months when he was first introduced in Civil War, which itself was set in 2016. Later on in Spider-Man Homecoming, which was set 2 months after Civil War, Peter reveals he's 15 years old, meaning he's a sophomore in high school, which was officially confirmed. Almost 2 years passed between the events of Spider-Man Homecoming and Avengers Infinity War, meaning that Peter should be around 17 years old before he was snapped out of existence by Thanos. And even if he isn't quite 17 yet and got his powers at 14 instead of 15, which is possible due to a statement that Tony Stark made in Homecoming, that would still mean that he would be a senior in high school by the time the events of Avengers Infinity War rolled around, since 2 years passed between Homecoming and Infinity War, and not a junior as they had initially claimed in Far From Home. Another issue this film tends to have is several moments in the movie ended up being awkward to an uncomfortable extent, which lasted a good quarter to half of the film. While certain moments were a funny kind of awkward, some made you want to cringe and roll your eyes, which could have been avoided, but to each their own. One final thing to take note of is I still did not care for certain portrayals by certain characters whatsoever. Eugene Flash Thompson, for example, is supposed to be this physically intimidating jock who bullies Peter, but later patches things up, becomes friends with him, and later becomes Agent Venom. While I do understand why they decided to change Flash into this smug rich kid who dislikes Peter because Peter is naturally smarter than him, because they wanted to adapt his character to fit the times, Tony Revolori honestly was just annoying, and he did not seem intimidating or imposing at all. Brad Davis's character felt more like an antagonist than Flash, and he had a more natural performance. And while I did enjoy Jacob Batalon's portrayal of Ned Leeds, the change to his character honestly had zero context whatsoever, and I do not see Ned becoming the Hobgoblin anytime soon. Plus, the incompetence, and sometimes sheer stupidity, of Peter's academic decathlon teacher Roger Harrington also carried over from the first film and just left me dumbfounded. Like, seriously, how is this guy still employed? I don't get it at all. All in all, though, despite its flaws, director John Watts delivered a spectacular sequel to Spider-Man Homecoming and a lighthearted and fun epilogue to wrap up Phase 3 of the MCU. It was hilarious, heartwarming, sad, full of heart, and had just enough action sequences to keep things from getting boring. That said, based on quality, I give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Based on personal enjoyment, a 9.5 out of 10. Well done to everyone involved. So, that's it for my honest review of Spider-Man Far From Home. I hope this answers any and all questions you may have, and if not, please feel free to shoot me a comment down below. And again, these are just my opinions. You don't have to agree with them, you don't have to like them. I'm just letting people know what I saw, what I observed, and I'm just trying to do my best to be informative and or helpful. So, that said, thanks again for watching. I hope this answers any and all questions you may have. Have a great day or evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. Stay safe, take care. Catch you later.